Greetings, Clausewitz here. So welcome to my special video to celebrate 100 subscribers. And now we are now about almost 170 subscribers, but at the point where I hit 100 I didn't want to interrupt the video series about the ancient Macedonian army, therefore I delayed this whole thing. Because I couldn't even know back then what I had to figure out all and what work it will need to do this video here, and therefore I wanted to finish one video series so I can start this here. And as you can see, we are not in my usual setup, we are in a video game, specifically Total War Rome 2. This is a game, a part of video game series, where you're actually playing in different time frames, different areas. So each title has like a different time frame, different area, and or same area and different time frame. And you play as a state in there on a big world map where you administrate your provinces, your cities, your armies, your inner politics. Not so much as in other games, but also you have real-time tactical battles. So when two armies engage on this big campaign map, which is inspired by the game Risk, then you have actually to fight a battle on the battlefield, or you can auto resolve it. So then the computer will just solve it for you and then give you the results, and then you have to live with that, or you can play it by yourself, the battle. So, and I played in this campaign here as Macedon, the ancient kingdom of Macedon, and made like a custom army. I had some things in mind I was interested in, I thought was fun, and so I just like enhanced the usual army we talked about in my video series. And first of all, before we look at this army, because this is the whole point of the video here, I want to show you my custom Macedonian army. This is a game, so it isn't like a perfect representation of reality, of course. The armies here are not as big as they were probably in the history, and of course how men behave, how the armies work, and how some physics here work is not as in reality. They tried to do their best but couldn't do everything, because this game has to be fun, this game has to be playable and accessible and understandable for like new players which don't know much about history or video games, and also to be fun. Because many things in warfare or in reality are not fun when you do them in real life, of course, but in games can be. So, first of all, so don't take everything is so much serious. It's really more for entertaining purposes, and of course a little bit like to think about stuff if this could work in reality or not, because this game shows some things pretty well, like the equipment they used, like some fighting techniques, some tactics they used, and also military principles. Not all of them, but many. And so this is one of the reasons why it's actually one of my favorite video game series, and I think also could be very fun to show you in all this context of military history and theory, which is my channel about. Another thing, I didn't build this army to really be perfect, because mainly I thought, or like I said, to be fun or just a little bit different than ancient Macedonian army was usually. But I think I did a pretty good job to really enhance it, to make it better, more flexible and stuff like this. But also it's not meant to be like the perfect game, the perfect army for the game, so in gameplay mechanical senses. So if you're like familiar with this game and know the unit statistics and the unit how effective they can be in different situations and how to exploit even game mechanics, it's not about that either. Yeah, it's really more about fun basically concerning military history. So I would say we can hop into it, shall we? First of all, I want to show you which troops are actually used here, because it is, like I said, different from a typical ancient Macedonian army. So here you see some slingers. This is nothing much to say about these guys. They are slingers, they have a sling, they have a little shield, dagger of course, so, but just there, I have just these troops here to really, of course, support and fire support my own units and just for skirmishing. Then here we have some familiar guys actually. These are Agrian Peltasts. So they have of course javelins, shields and helmets, also axes in this case, not swords or not a mixture of swords and axes. This is also like typical game stuff. They are here called Agrian X-Men, not like Agrian Peltasts or just Peltasts. In reality it wouldn't be such a difference, more in organization would be matter where they come from, but the game of course, to make it like more distinguished from each other, the factions and the units, they had to make it to like Agrian X-Men. But basically these are Agrian Peltas like in history, and I use them for the same job basically, but a little bit different deployment, but this I will show you later. So now the good stuff. These are also familiar faces, the Phalangites. They pretty much look like they would be in reality, or would have been in reality. They have the shields on their arm, they had their pikes, the sarissa, they had thoraxes. The kind of formation they're forming is very, very close to which one in reality. It's not so dense as it would be. It's also like a technical issue. They can't like squeeze the people so much together, because it would lead to some errors or some like not good looking stuff. So don't mind that so much, but it's come pretty close to it. Something I'm very not really proud of, but what I really like about this army was one of my main ideas. These guys here are Thracian warriors. The clothing are really like typical Thracian, what we could find in historian sources, like on the pictures of Thracian people. We often see those type of clothing, and what they carry with them is Rhomphalia. So this is a form of like two-handed sword or like a little pole arm. You see a big variation here. Some guys here with like smaller ones, so shorter ones, some guys with more longer versions, and it's really interesting weapon because it's so unusual for the time frame and everything. But we have evidence of them using this, and it was actually a big threat, like the Falks, which is very connected to those guys here. But it was very dangerous for the Romans when they had to deal with those guys. So I used the killing power of those weapons here in my army. In the campaign map I actually subdued a Thracian faction. There are like 2 or so Thracian factions, made them my client state, and so recruited like levy troops from them, in this case the warriors, to support my own army. So here we see also something familiar, hoplites, really just hoplites. Good representation, the shield, the hoplon, the whole armor they're wearing, of course the spear, but in this game they wouldn't use swords because it's also a technical issue, and that they can't really change the animations all the way through, stuff like that. I don't want to discuss anything technical here because I'm not so well educated in that, just that you know. But they perform basically as spearmen, which is also the main role in history. And just a note here, the animation, how they use their shields here is not proper. They're not using it as a strapped shield, they're using it as a central grip shield. But just a side note, it doesn't matter so much here in the sense of the game or what I want to show you. These guys, what their role here is, I will come to later. So here you see my general, which is also the king of my state here. It's the guy basically here in the middle with the one-handed spear. The other guys are companion cavalry. Pretty close to what they would look like in history. Not so sure about the horse armor you can see here. I heard of this thing on the horses' heads before, but I'm not completely sure about this lamellar armor stuff in the front. Pretty reasonable actually. It's possible. We just don't have so much evidence. It was definitely there in this time frame, but if the companions of Alexander the Great, for example, used it, is not sure. This is, but I would say they did, because it's so important that the horse doesn't impale itself on the charge. So, but yeah, those guys are companion cavalry and are basically the bodyguard and the personal troops of my king and general. So here we have also some familiar faces, the Sarissophori, or they are just called Sarissa cavalry here, but they are the same thing. You see, just light cavalry, not many armor and stuff like this. The guy in the middle here is an officer, by the way. They had the sword as a sidearm, had a big lance, basically a sarissa, and just a helmet for important basic protection. Also some citizen cavalry, which is pretty yeah, not like so much a fantasy product by the developers, but they are basically hoplites on horses, as you can see. Have many of them has hoplons, some of them has just basic shields, as you can see here. It's just a basic central grip shield. Have 100 spears and dinothoraxes. They are also pretty close to typical light infantry, and it's basically that, but they are basically a little bit too much equipped, because the typical light cavalry of Greece states wouldn't use so much armor normally. I wouldn't exclude it completely, but basically those guys here are the light cavalry typical for the Macedonian army. Part of them using like shorter weapons and more defensive weapons like the shield to engage with enemy cavalry in the long term, or to be more protected against missiles, while the others more meant for the charge and for shock tactics. So now we come to the deployment, the formation in its whole. So you can see here a little overview how it actually looks like. So we're coming to everything in more detail now. So we are now more in the interface of the game, from which you gather all the information you need and how you can control units and everything. And you can see here that in the front of my army are those skirmisher guys. So these guys here are slingers, and in the middle I have my peltasts. And it's just a basic formation. Of course I want to skirmish when if possible, and want to use the range of the units and more to counter other skirmishers so that my phalanx isn't affected. So you see here that these parts in the middle are my phalangites. And they have some gaps between them, which is intended, by the way. It's not so usual for historical phalanx. Of course, you don't want a gap in the formation, but we'll come later to it. And I have here on the outside of the formation, I have the hoplites to really secure flanks. Basically the same task the shield bearers would have to do, and therefore also the same equipment, but I deployed them on both flanks actually, because if the phalangites are flanked, it's always bad. Of course, they are mostly vulnerable on the right side, but they also can be flanked easily in their back on the left. And giving two hoplite formations, two hoplite battalions, however you want to call it, or units on each side, so one on each side, is actually a good way to cover it from enemy cavalry attacks. I also can easily put those guys just in front of here a little bit to really extend the phalanx even further. So if I face a bigger opponent, so I can easily make a longer line, but also secure the flanks more effectively. So you maybe noticed that behind here I have the Thracian warriors, and they pretty much I pretty much deployed them directly behind those gaps, and for the reason you maybe thought of, so that they could actually charge through those gaps here, and also would of course close the gaps. And this is what I thought by it. I actually was very inspired like by Roman typical tactics, where they also had like this chessboard-like formations and deployment. Also I thought of like shield wall tactics, where they could open the shield wall and send like more heavy shock troops through, like with Dane axes or stuff like that, to really give the enemy shield wall a heavy blow and then retreat back. And also the gaps in the phalanx are for my skirmishers to retreat for. So my skirmishers can, when the enemy approaches, easily retreat between those gaps behind our own lines, be safe, and then my Thracian warriors can actually counter-charge against the enemy, and using those gaps to actually charge, but also can easily retreat to this whole safe zone here. And on the other hand, the enemy kinda had to take those gaps. He can't really push through my pikes, because like I always said, pikes are pretty invincible from the front. So he basically has to go between those, or he basically gets pushed between those, because if you are a guy like attacking my pikes, this direction is like your death, but this direction also, because your own troops are pushing you against it, it won't let you retreat or rout. So that some guys will go by accident or just through self-preservation go to those gaps, where then my Thracians coming through and just kill them all basically. This is the whole idea. But even if the enemy would won't like engage my pikes so directly and would form more a line before them and would hesitate, then I could also charge with my Thracian warriors through and break them on this point, and then advance with my pikes also. So this is the whole concept of that. In any case, I have a lot of killing power, I have a lot of defensive capabilities and more flexibility, because of course my Thracian warriors could also go not over but around the phalanx, attack the enemy in the back or in the sides, and or could just be placed here. Also, the Agrians can also retreat back here and then form up here and throw javelins between those gaps, or even close those gaps as melee infantry, because they are, with their shields, pretty effective melee fighters as well. So if, like I said, the enemy has big lines or I can't really push forwards through the line, then the Thracians have more time to outflank them. But also, when the Peltast are in the safe zone here, they also can easily outflank enemies. So you see, this is all about have the flexibility to outflank or hold or even push to the center of the enemy. My hoplites, like I said, were just standing here a little bit, not on the same line as the phalanx, to secure it, and even can easily then go like here to counter enemy cavalry attacks here, or just forming up a longer line here, so the enemy cavalry has to go really around here. And then I have, of course, my cavalry, which can then, of course, intercept enemy cavalry charges coming from the back of my army, but also have them here to, of course, outflank enemies, to outflank them even further, to intercept enemy cavalry movements, and of course to chase enemies. And I have them on both flanks, so I can do this on both sides. So no cavalry can just go through here, then I will just intercept them, how I described, and I can of course countercharge them. But even if the enemy has so many cavalry that my cavalry would be occupied all the fight long, I still have my Thracian warriors, which would do an amazing job in killing power in each way, because when the cavalry is occupied of my enemy, I also can go easily around them and outflank them, and then use really the big chops and slices of those fires to cut them down. And I have also left my general with his companion cavalry, which could also do the same, flanking or supporting my cavalry. And this depends highly on which situation I am. If I am, of course, in a more defensive scenario, or in a scenario where the enemy has many skirmishers, I would actually use my cavalry to ride along and try to take out those skirmishers, where I would engage with my heavy infantry the whole enemy formation in melee. And I could actually really disregard my cavalry here, because I have those Thracians, I have my Agrians, and I have some hoplites even to secure the flanks without cavalry. And you see, this is all about those flexibility stuff. I don't rely so much or even at all at any side. This is the whole point. I said this, that I don't like at the typical Macedonian army that is actually relied so much on the right side, because I have the same amount of power left as I have right. So the enemy also have to think, will I come from this side to outflank him, or will I come from this side, or even both? He has to deal with it. But in the same time I can use infantry to outflank him even further, or push through the middle. And so he has to regard all those things, and he can't counter everything. And I can't, even when the enemy is like has a very strong side here, so he has like many cavalry here. Oops, this looks strange, but if you have many cavalry on this blob here, I just would go with those cavalry even here, took my general with it, so I have like a concentrate force and crush or fight against his cavalry here. And this combination of shock cavalry and like more defensive melee cavalry is really good combination to counter enemy cavalry movements. And by the way, if the enemy deploys horse archers, I have my slingers for them. My slingers, I have a very high range, so I can actually lose the defensiveness of my infantry to, from there, sling the enemy horse archers down. Of course, if the enemy would actually have a lot of horse skirmishers, really a lot of horse archers, horse javelin men, stuff like that, this would put me in some struggle. My cavalry is not really fast enough to run them, and I have not enough slingers. So actually I would change the formation then at this point to like more slings or more archers, basically, to have a bigger range and just shoot them all down. But actually I could counter every other enemy formation with this army, basically, and And now let us see how it looks like in action. So in this battle I'm actually defending against a Celtic faction which is attacking me. And don't concern that we are fighting like in snow and in winter. This is also a thing, like the game don't punish you so much for fighting in winter. It would be actually pretty impossible to fight in winter. It's just too cold, too hard with the snow. It's not completely impossible, of course, but with so much snow and everything, it's not a good idea. So let us look what happens. You see the enemies advancing here with a lot of like Celtic warriors, with some spearmen, with skirmishers, and with a lot of cavalry. My skirmishers will start to attack them, of course, with their stuff. I send forth now my cavalry to actually countercharge the enemy cavalry here, the same as here. So let's pause it for a minute. So, also the AI of the game is not the best and has some struggles sometimes, just that you know. But this is, like I said, don't take everything here too serious. So the next step is, my slingers are actually slinging some stuff. My pelters are not in range yet, and I see there's some cavalry left here in the center. So I will start to retreat my skirmishers actually, put my slingers more back here, but will let my pelters out for now, so they can get off some javelins, hopefully against those cavalry. And you see they did pretty well. So I realized the cavalry is now like retreating from an attack on the front. I first thought I tried to get my skirmishers, but actually it seems they want to reinforce here their own cavalry, which is pretty mangled by my own cavalry, or they actually want to outflank me. And this is now where my hoplites come in place. I will just tell them to make an extend line on the side here, and to be of course on guard, which they normally are, to maybe intercept those horsemen. So the rest of his army is like preparing for a melee charge, as it seems, but he also is waiting a little bit for some reinforcements here. On this left side, my cavalry is doing pretty well against the enemy cavalry. So he is like 35 men of 80 left, and I have still like almost all my cavalry. This is what I mean, this good combination of sturdy melee cavalry with shields and armor, and some shock cavalry with long pikes, which can actually take out horsemen pretty well, like I described in my videos about heavy cavalry. So let us continue what's happening. So, this enemy is still riding, and his whole line is approaching with a little shift, as it seems like, towards his side. His spearmen come pretty dangerous close to my cavalry. I will let them be for a minute, so hopefully that those cavalrymen here will rout. They're pretty experienced, how I can see. This little silver icon there means they have high experience. My people as well, but this means they have a lot higher moral, so it will take them longer to rout. But hopefully it happens soon, so that my cavalry can retreat actually. And now my pelters will lose some spear volleys, as you can see pretty much here. Also the enemy actually gets some off. So I retreat now with my peltasts, so they can actually be used more efficiently on the flanks or even to support them. And I will wait the cavalry, the enemy infantry charge, of course, so that my phalangites can bind them. So now they start routing, but also the spears coming in, so I retreat them. My guys here will attack those. So now it comes to the charge. Celts have, like they had in history, almost every one of them has javelins. They already throw them and now coming into the charge. some of my phalangites actually suffered, especially those guys here with like 4 or so in the head, but the formation is still pretty strong, and this is basically all about. So let us see. But also, therefore, that they have to charge a little bit upwards, I have a good advantage here. So you now see that also my hoplites are holding off those on the flank. And my cavalry fucked up, like I see here. They couldn't retreat in proper time. Great, so I lose some of my best cavalrymen properly. Yeah, some of these things happen. Of course, I'm also a little bit distracted. So now I see that I actually came into a gap here, because my hoplites are changed a little bit switched from here. But this is not so bad. I have my Agrans here, and I will send them here in melee. Also, I will unleash some of my Thracian warriors. Also, I now choose to actually use my general. Normally I put him here to command the enemy, because the general has an influence area where it actually gets your your own troops get some bonuses, mostly moral. And but the thing is, he also has, like I said, very strong companion cavalry at his command, and I want to use those charges. So now something not so good happens here. This guy is actually pretty beat now, because I get a volley after volley. And so I will charge out with my Thracian warriors here, hopefully to intercept them. Or, not to intercept them, so that they will stop shooting. Also send some peltasts out. Now my cavalry gets threatened here by those tribesmen. My general is going through this gap here. I routed here successfully the enemy cavalry, so I can now take on the skirmishers. Because those guys are actually killing my phalangites. So you see how the enemy is now routing the center, because against the pikes you can't do anything, and my Thracian warriors taking them out pretty effectively. Now there's coming some reinforcements in form from very heavy infantry. This shouldn't be so bad. So I have now some warriors open here. Also some hoplites. My cavalry is also now free here, and I can put some pressure on those fleeing troops. My Sarissas really suffered here.
Citizen cavalry!
So I'm now like collecting the heads of the fleeing enemies, now not so bad, and just route the rest of them, picking up the routed ones so that they won't reform for a later battle. Actually, when enemies rout here, they can actually reform in the battle itself, but then they will just flee, and if they manage to flee, they can actually be used in another battle, or if they're not enough, they actually will completely disband it. And yeah, so this is my custom ancient Macedonian army, and I hope you liked it, and this little display of its prowess, I guess, I'm not sure. I have to say it was a little bit difficult to explain everything and to play it. I could actually make a replay of the battle so that I don't have to play it, but replays don't often work so properly, so good in this game. So I decided to make it more live in quotes. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you not already did. I talk about military history and theory basically here. This is like an exception special video, but if you want me to do more about video games, so about this specific video game here, then let me know. And hopefully see you soon.